It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, welcome everyone to the Sam Lesante Show for a very important show today. Remember, November 5th, very important day. It's a day that you should go out and vote, but please know who the candidates are. And don't be misled, my friends, by all the lies. We want to know who they are. They represent you and they affect the way you live. We see it every day. I'm very happy to have on the show today the United States candidate, Dave McCormick. Now, let me make a note here. Just so you know, Bob Casey has been U.S. Senator for, I think, 18 years. 18 years he's never been on the Sam Lesante Show. How many times he's been invited? A zillion times. Why? I have no idea. But I contacted Dave McCormick's campaign. Within 24 hours, I got a response. And they did everything they possibly could to make sure that Dave would come here to talk to you, mostly in Luzerne and Schuylkill County, as to who Dave McCormick is. Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Great to be with you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to meet you. I hear, well, you hear so many things about you, and all these bad things about you. You're just a bad person. I mean, you know, it's just terrible.
Well, listen, I want to give you a hint. The ads that say I'm awesome, those are my ads, okay?
Yeah. You know, it's reality. Sometimes you wonder, do people really know what reality is?
Right.
Okay. The first question we have is this. Dave McCormick, a successful person, you know, he's doing extremely well in his life. Of course, you didn't have to work for that. They just gave you all that. Why did you decide to run for public office to become a U.S. Senator?
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me today. And, you know, I grew up not far from here. I was born in Washington County, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, but I grew up in Bloomsburg, Columbia County. And my dad was the president of Bloomsburg State College, the local college there, and my folks had a farm. And I grew up, went to Bloomsburg High School, so we played sports all around this area. Played football, wrestled, baled hay, trimmed Christmas trees. And wrestling got me to West Point. And I was the co-captain of the wrestling team at West Point. Graduated from West Point, went to the 82nd Airborne Division, went to Ranger School, went to Iraq and served. And then came back to Pennsylvania and ran a business that created hundreds of jobs. The reason I take you through that is at West Point, which really changed my life, there's a motto: duty, honor, country. Those three words have really been how I've tried to live my life. And service to country is a big part of what, you know, I believe in and what's marked my career. And I think we're at a moment in our country where we need real leadership, where our country's going in the wrong direction spiritually, economically. Challenges from abroad, our adversaries are testing us. And I think we need strong, common sense leadership. And I think Senator Casey hasn't given us that. I think Senator Casey is a career politician. He's been in elected office for 30 years, in the Senate for 18 years. And he's been too weak to really stand up to the direction of his party. He's supported President Biden and Vice President Harris 99% of the time with his voting. And he's voted for a set of very liberal policies that are out of step with Pennsylvania. So the way I'd like to say it is, Senator Casey went to Washington at the time. He said he was going to the Senate to change Washington, but what happened along the way is Washington changed Senator Casey. So we need strong leadership, and that's why I'm running.
So you feel that it's an obligation on your part because you're very successful, okay? And then you get the question is that how do you become rich, okay? And then, God forbid, you know, you should be successful in life and you should work. And that always gets me. But, you know, why then, you're married, you have children, you're doing very well, but here's Dave McCormick wants to be U.S. Senator, okay? You're doing well. Why, you know?
Well, it's in part because I did so well, because I had the opportunity to have the American dream, live the American dream. You know, I want to make sure that's available for future kids. And that American dream was not just the American dream, it was really the Pennsylvania dream. So, you know, growing up in Pennsylvania, having the opportunity to see all that Pennsylvania has to offer, running a business in Pennsylvania, being part of Pittsburgh's Renaissance, which I was when I led a company there called Free Markets. That all has given me a deep sense of responsibility and gratitude to give back. to do my part. And my mom and dad were public school teachers. My dad they both went on to get doctors in education, but my dad, as I said, became the president of Bloomsburg State College. Their entire lives are about public service. So I didn't grow up thinking that the way that I would make my mark in the world was by being a successful business person and making a lot of money. I grew up thinking that I'd make my mark in the world by being a good leader and potentially public service. And the successful business career, I mean, to be honest with you, was as much of a surprise to me as anybody.
Dave, so they paint you, okay, first of all, they paint you that's multimillionaire, living in Connecticut. Who cares, if they vote for you, it's not a vote for Pennsylvania. And, I've seen that happen throughout the years. I said to you before the show, I've done over 6,000 shows. Many people like you sat there, many people were honest, and many people were phonies. Why I can't get Casey to come to the show, I have no idea, but that's another story. But let me ask you this, okay? We're talking about, you made money, you invested in China, you brought on the fentanyl things, and now you're, well, tell me about that story, because my God, this guy invested in killing our people.
So I had two big chapters of my business career. I ran a company in Pittsburgh. I joined that company, we grew it. It had 1,000 employees, and 600 of them were in Pittsburgh. And I eventually became the CEO and sold that company, and those 600 jobs stayed in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania. So the first part of my career was building jobs in Pennsylvania and building a company in Pennsylvania. I then went back to public service. I served for 4 years in the White House. I was a deputy national security advisor for President Bush. Worked in the Treasury. And then I had a second chapter of my business career where I ran a big company in Connecticut, a company called Bridgewater, which is one of the big investment firms in the world. It manages pension plans for policemen and teachers and firemen. And that company was a big global investor. It invested all around the world. It invested about 3% of the assets it invested on behalf of those pension plans in China. Just to put that in perspective, if I went to your house today, you'd have about 30% of the things in your home would be made in China. So if you're in the global business world, most big companies or most big investors do business with China. And when we invested in China, we invested in companies that were on the stock exchange there. We didn't identify particular companies. We just invested like your 401k invest. Senator Casey is trying to use that experience to try to attack me and not make it about him and his record. And the fentanyl is a good example. So, we have a huge fentanyl crisis in Pennsylvania. 4,000 fentanyl deaths last year alone from fentanyl. And that comes from China sending ingredients, illicitly, not from companies selling it to hospitals. These ingredients from fentanyl that come to Mexico, and the cartels take it and they make it into fentanyl in these manufacturing facilities, and they send it across the open border, and it finds its way into Pennsylvania within 48 hours. Those wide open borders are the reason that we have such a fentanyl crisis in our country, and those Mexican cartels are behind it. And so that's why Senator Casey and President Biden and Vice President Harris should have secured the border. Instead, we have 10 million illegal migrants. They should have stopped the flow of fentanyl. Instead, we have 100,000 people that died last year from fentanyl. So what I've said is Senator Casey has failed Pennsylvanians in terms of securing the border and doing what was necessary. Senator Casey's trying to change the conversation and try to attack me rather than taking responsibility for his failure as a senator. And listen, I've not been a senator. He's been there 18 years. The border's out of control. Inflation's out of control. There's a war on fossil fuels. Our adversaries around the world are attacking us. So Senator Casey would lead you to believe that all the problems in the world have nothing to do with him. All the problems facing America have nothing to do with him. My point is that, listen, he's responsible because he's voted for all those things. But more than that, we just need strong leadership. We need change. We need common sense.
Dave, I had 21 stores. My partner and I, Johnny, we had like 400 and some employees. And so you try to do the best to maintain a lot of families. You've hired many, many thousands of people. Senator Casey evidently is a career politician. And that's okay. I mean, and here's what I hear. Just this morning I did a show. And I told him that I have Dave McCormick coming. Oh, that's great. I said, well, Sam, ask him this. I said, well, I'm going to ask him questions that we all want to know. If you walk through this mall, they'll tell me, okay. One thing about senior citizens, Dave, they'll tell you the way it is. They don't care.
Exactly.
Okay? But when you're looking at, the Casey name.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you ever knew his father.
I did.
His father was a Jim.
Yeah.
If his father ran today, I'd vote for him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and these are comments that I got on my emails, okay, some of these comments I'm going to say, unfortunately, he is not his father, okay? But for them to attack any politician, all right, and they're not factual, to me is how could you go to bed at night and know that you've lied to your constituents?
Yeah.
I mean, that's hurtful to me.
Yeah.
Okay. He's blaming the corporations. See, he blames them. Go after the rich. See, the rich, you got to go after those people because they're bad people. They're employing people. Dave McCormick employed people. It came to you overnight because you never had to work for that. You're in the government. So, and then you have to pick up the paper or you listen on TV and you see the slant.
Yeah.
You see how they spin things, okay? How do you live with that, Dave?
Well, listen. I mean, this is I ran for the Senate in 2022, lost a close primary, but so I'm new to politics. I mean, it is a contact sport. It's hard to believe how much people lie about you. And in the case of Senator Casey, just a couple examples. So he's running an abortion ad that says I'm against the 3 exceptions and that I'm an extremist on abortion. This has been reviewed by independent groups called PolitiFact that say that's a complete lie. It's completely inconsistent with my position, which I'm happy to talk about if you'd like. He's run an ad which you said that he's cracking down on inflation by attacking the companies. It's a
and blame everybody else.
Problem is greed.
Yeah.
Any mainstream economist has said that the cause of inflation is the extreme spending, the $5 trillion of spending. The rise in prices is driven by all the bills that Bob Casey voted for that spent $5 trillion and the war on energy, which has driven up our gas prices by 50%. That's been identified by PolitiFact as Bob Casey's lying. His attack on me on fentanyl, the great irony of that is that he was taking issue with the fact that in Bridgewater, the company I mentioned, held this company called Humanwell, which was a pharmaceutical company. Bob Casey owned that same company in his personal investment fund. That was identified in an editorial of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So people lie about you all the time. Senator Casey is lying about me. Listen, I'm a big boy. I can take a lot of punches. I've been through a lot harder things than this. But I think what's important for the people of Pennsylvania is why is he lying about me instead of focusing on what he's done as a senator? He's been there for 18 years. And the question for Pennsylvanians is, hey, are you better off because Bob Casey's been fighting for you for 18 years? And I think the answer is no. I think there's not a lot to show for his work. He's been paid $4 million during that time by Pennsylvania taxpayers. And what do they got to show for their investment? Now, with regard to his father, my dad, as I said, was the president of Bloomsburg State College. He then went on to be the chancellor of higher education. He worked for a governor named Casey. So my dad was a colleague, knew Governor Casey. Listen, the Governor Casey that we all know, his son has taken a set of liberal extreme positions that are completely out of step with his father. Senator Casey supports biological males competing with biological females in our high schools and colleges. I'm a father of 6 daughters. That's a big deal for me. Senator Casey has supported sanctuary cities. Senator Casey's been in favor of defunding the police. He thinks the problem is systematic racism in our police forces. Senator Casey's position on abortion, there is no senator in the Senate that's changed his position more on abortion than Senator Casey. He ran as a pro-life senator, a pro-life Democrat. Senator Casey in 2022 signed legislation that would have allowed abortion up until the due date and also ensured federal funding. So this is a guy who's just out of step, not only with Pennsylvania, but with his father. And I think that's the key to this race. The choice between a career politician and someone who's been too weak to stand up to the liberal agenda and a guy who's been a strong leader in the military and business and wants to promote common sense. That's what this race is all about.
You mentioned about common sense. And if you want common sense, seniors will give it to you. And it's interesting, I was talking to a guy who was 92 years old. He was in one of the wars. And he says, Sam, he said, it's amazing, my opinion anymore. He says, I'm 92. He says, I guess my opinion doesn't count. He says, but, You know, I sit here as a 92-year-old man, and I see how many people are so misinformed.
Yeah.
How many people are so misinformed? Because what you're talking about now, and you're breaking these things down, people don't know that, Dave.
Yeah.
They don't know the inner workings of what you just said about him having this and him having. And listen, I've never met the man. I've as you know, I've invited him a zillion times, but I don't get him to come on the show. I don't know why. And he said to me, he said, "Isn't it a shame where our country's going today?"
Yeah.
Here's a veteran. Here's a person who's worked all his life. Families, Dave, are facing reality every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and then when you see the liberal agenda, I mean, again, is it working?
It's not working. No, we're failing. I mean, we are failing as a country. Now, I believe that with the right leadership, you know, America's future is bright. I mean, but right now we're not on a path where our kids or our kids' kids are going to be as well off as we are. And, you know, economics is the thing that most families are struggling with right now. Just to put this in perspective, 60% of Pennsylvania families live paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
What's happened under Biden, Harris, Casey, and again, Senator Casey voted for every one of these bills, is that the cost of things, food prices, food, fuel, rent, have all gone up by more than 20%. In fact, fuel prices have gone up by almost 50%. At the same time, wages haven't kept up. So it's like a tax. Somebody went into your pocket and stole 20% of your money.
That's right.
Because you can't keep up. That's killing working families. If you look at new home purchases for homes that cost $250,000 or less, they're down 22%. So what is the American dream? The American dream is that you work hard, you're going to have opportunity, your kids are going to have a chance to be better off than you are, you're going to be able to send them to college or to technical school, whatever it is that's going to help them get the right career. You can afford to go on vacation, you can afford to own a home. That American dream is slipping away for many Americans and many Pennsylvanians because of these terrible economic policies. On top of that, if you're a guy who's never done anything but public service and anything but government, elected official, you think government's the answer to everything. You're like a hammer looking for a nail, right? So here we have this inflation problem. Bob Casey says, no, the problem is not my bad policies. The problem is that these greedy businesses, by the way, I'm not defending any business, but 80% of the jobs in Pennsylvania come from small businesses. This inflation's killing them. The regulations are killing them. So we need to have a government in Washington that reduces cost, lowers taxes, and makes it easier for businesses to grow, because those small businesses, they're the lifeblood of our economy. It's not government creating the jobs, it's small business owners creating that. Bob Casey doesn't understand that. Bob Casey's made it worse for Pennsylvanians, not better. And that's why I think he needs to go.
You know, we talk about health care, all right? And the famous thing that they always do, and this came from an email to me, Mr. Lesante, it's funny how the Democrats always come out, the Republicans are going to do away with Social Security. We're going to, you're going to do away, and no, my God, when a senior hears that, you're going to do away with my Social Security. I mean, it's the scare tactics. I've never seen a race with so many lies that I've seen this year in my lifetime. I've never seen people so scared that they'll do anything and lie on top of it. But yet the American people, my friends in Luzerne County, Schuylkill County, that some of them believe that stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're told every day there's no checks and balance. And certainly you're not going to get a break from the liberal price, okay? It's amazing.
Well, let me tell you a story. So my dad's 86. My dad's 86, my mom's 84. They live in Enola, which is outside of Harrisburg.
Yeah.
And my dad called me a couple months ago, and he's been obviously very involved in the campaign, and he said, listen, son, I love you. I think you're going to be a great senator. You touch Social Security, and I'm going to vote for you.
Yeah,
right? So I recognize how important this is. This is a promise. This is a promise that we've made to our seniors. It's a promise we've made to everybody who's working and paying into Social Security. And so, let me say unequivocally, we can't touch Social Security. We have to live up to our promises. But there's another reason that's so important, because what's happened under Biden, Harris, and Casey is that the cost of living has gone up. But if you're on a fixed income, like people who are living off Social Security, you're getting squeezed. So the thing that the inflation hurts people the most that are living paycheck to paycheck and are on fixed incomes. So the Biden, Harris, Casey policies have been really hard on seniors. You take on top of that Sam, the increase in pharmaceutical costs? So when Biden proposed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is in fact the Inflation Creation Act because it's contributed to the spending, they said that they were going to lower prescription drug prices. Prescription drugs nationally and in Pennsylvania are up by more than 20%. So if you're a senior under Biden-Harris-Casey, despite all the talk and the hand waving, what's really happened to you is that your costs have gone up, your income stayed the same, and your prescription drug cost has gone up. So listen, seniors can count on me not to take away Social Security or change Social Security, but they can also count on me to help run the economy in a way that's not going to squeeze them like Bob Casey has.
Yeah. Folks, I'm talking with Dave McCormick. It's interesting. I tell you all the time, my friends, look, check the people out, okay? And I apologize for the liberal media, I really do. Sometimes I feel embarrassed to be in this field when I see, especially when you have national debates and you see how they're one-sided and it's just not fair. But you're not stupid. You know what's going on. We'll be back with Dave right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Once again, thank you for making the Sam Lesante Show the #1 talk show in Northeastern Pennsylvania. I appreciate it. November 5th, please vote, okay, and know your candidates, particularly the U.S. Senate candidate. I'm talking to, my guest today is Dave McCormick, who is running for United States Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. Dave, we were talking about, reality is here, okay? You could tell me how great things are in life, and reality is here. I'm paying the price. I'm trying to get my deck fixed, and I'm looking at a deck that used to cost $5,000, now $10,000, $15,000, and it's just like you get hammered across the board. What are you going to do about that?
Well, the first thing we need to do is get to the root causes of the inflation. It's bad policy. It's bad economic policy. Essentially what happened was Biden, Harris, and Casey voted for every one of these things. They put $5 trillion of new spending in place. And a lot of this spending was to subsidize electric vehicles, solar panels, at the expense of fossil fuels. Now, you know from being a Pennsylvanian that we're blessed in Pennsylvania with unbelievable natural resources, particularly natural gas. And the Biden-Harris-Casey administration has been terrible on this. They've restricted LNG exports. They've made it much more difficult to drill. They've restricted pipeline development. There's bad permitting processes. So we need to unlock our energy sector. That's a huge source of growth for Pennsylvania. If we could only do one thing to change Pennsylvania's future, it would be to unlock energy, unlock our natural gas. That'll help our economy grow. That'll help us generate more tax revenue nationally and here in Pennsylvania to create great new paying jobs. We need to match that with a reduction in spending. We need to pull back on this ridiculous excessive subsidization that the Biden administration has done. By the way, when we subsidize EVs, electric vehicles, we're essentially paying the Chinese for lithium batteries and solar panels because 70% of them come from there. So we've made ourselves more dependent on China, and we've hurt manufacturing here at home. When we mandate, which is what Biden did, and Casey supported him, they mandated, get ready, by 2032, 70% of new light vehicle sales have to be electric vehicles. So if you want to buy a pickup truck, a Dodge Ram pickup, you can't get it unless you buy one of the 30% that are left in 2032. That's only 8 years away. So this government under Biden-Harris with Casey's support is essentially distorting our economy. We got to pull back on that ridiculous spending. Another example, I can't think of anything more un-American than student loan forgiveness. I don't know if you've been following this, but the Biden administration wants to give $160 billion of loan forgiveness to students. Now, just to put 160, because these numbers get so big sometimes, it's hard to imagine what they mean. $160 billion is bigger than the budget of the United States Army for 1 year. They want to take that, forgive those loans. I went to high school, Bloomsburg High School, 40 miles from here. I'm 59 years old. I graduated with two of my closest friends. One went to college to get into law enforcement. He took a couple extra years because he wanted to didn't want to take on too many loans, wanted to pay his way as he went. The other didn't go to college. He went to a couple years and then didn't go to college and went on a different path, in part because he couldn't afford it. Those two guys, you and me, we're all paying for the loan forgiveness for a bunch of kids, many of whom are going to be making a lot of money. It is un-American, but that's the kind of spending you get under Harris. That's what it'll be under her. And Bob Casey's a sure vote. He will vote for everything she says because he hasn't had the strength to stand up to the liberal Democratic Party that's going in the wrong direction. That's why this race is so important. Those ideas are very dramatically different paths for America.
I have good friends of mine who, I have one very good friend of mine who hates Trump. He's a liberal Democrat, etc., and we agree to disagree, but he's one of my closest friends. And he's allowed to do that, but sometimes he gets really upset. I don't get upset. I just try to look at the facts. And my God, Dave, it's a shame people don't look at the facts. So they go to your website, okay? They go to your website, they'll know all about who Dave McCormick is. And I am very happy when I see I'm dealing with a person who's successful. Because when you go to a doctor, you don't care what his name is. Right. And you have a serious operation, you know, we say, oh, Casey, that's a good name. I think I'll have him operate on me, okay? Yeah, it's my heart, but don't worry about it. But I like the name. But McCormick, he's a bum. I mean, who likes McCormick? But he's a good surgeon. Yeah. So, and when I say that, it's really stupid to say that, but it's unfortunate how people will only vote because I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. Yeah. That's got to stop, Dave.
Yeah, and it's more now than at any time in our lives, I think. Yeah. It's more polarized. People are with their team, red or blue. But what I try to say, and I mean it from my heart, listen, I'm choosing to run for office. Honored to be the nominee out of love of country, love of Pennsylvania. I want to serve. I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, but I'm not running to be the Republican senator from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I'm running to be the senator from Pennsylvania. Yeah. And these problems, inflation, the fentanyl crisis, the war on fossil fuels, the crime in our cities, the fact that our adversaries are challenging us from around the world, those aren't Republican problems. Those are independents, those are Democrats. So I pledge to you and to the voters of Pennsylvania, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, if I have the honor of being the senator, I am going to work my tail off to represent all Pennsylvanians.
I want you to tell our audience, what do you think is the most challenging thing that that people in Pennsylvania are facing?
Well, listen, our country's being challenged spiritually, economically, adversaries around the world. The thing we miss most is leadership. Strong leadership, independent leadership, someone who will take a stand and fight for common sense economic policies. Right now, most families are getting squeezed economically. Their communities are being destroyed by illegal immigration. Crime is on the rise. They feel like America and Pennsylvania is going in the wrong direction. 80% of Pennsylvanians think it's going in the wrong direction. We need change, we need leadership, we need strength. That's what I'll offer as the United States Senator.
Well, let me warn you, my friend. Be prepared for more negative ads.
Yeah.
Be prepared for more lies to come out because they're nervous and they're scared. And when you're scared, you go in the corner, let me throw as much mud as I can. I'm just hoping that the general public understand who the person is. I appreciate you coming and making the time to...
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
First of all, I've got a lot of faith in Pennsylvanians. I think they're sorting through it. I think they're going to figure that out. And for those who want to learn more about me, there's no Senate candidate or any candidate in the country that's laid out more of their thinking and what they'll do in the Senate than me, Dave McCormick, PA.com. Honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. My friends, I've tried for 18 years to get Senator Bob Casey to come on the Sam Lesante Show. Maybe he doesn't like to be on small shows. I have no idea. But thanks to you, 56,000 people a week watch this show, and I appreciate that very much. Please check the candidates out, okay? Don't vote for Democrat, vote for the person who's going to help us. You know, you live life every day. You see the mess we're in, okay? It didn't happen overnight. So hopefully you'll get out to vote at least on November 5th. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.